Warning: the following documentary contains mentions of suicide and occult material. Viewer discretion is advised. In the 1970s, it was a new age for Christianity. The so-called Jesus movement was beginning to pick up speed. This was where many denominations came together to live like Jesus and live a holy lifestyle, claiming to end the reign of false prophets once and for all. This also began a strong belief to bring the youth into Christianity. This led to a lot of advocacy for youth groups and for some parents keeping their children safe from things that they believed to be satanic or the occult. However, for many teens in the early 80s, the fantasy genre was being revived. Movies like The Never-Ending Story, The Dark Crystal, and The Princess Bride quickly became popular until all of that came to a head with the rising popularity of the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D for short, developed by TSR, released in 1974. This game revolutionized the fantasy genre, taking the world by storm. It was a game with no board, and most of the game was played in the minds of the players. You use dice to roll for how well something is performed, and sheets with lists of your character's abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. If your character dies in the game, you can create a new one and keep playing. However, some parents were initially concerned by the large amount of freedom in the game, mixed with the appearance of demons, monsters, and other satanic beings. They believed that children could be converted to devil worship or other occult mediums. However, it was a teen's death that gave rise to an anti-D&D movement. In 1979, James Dallas Egbert III disappeared at age 17 when he was a college sophomore. His family hired William Deere, a private investigator. Deere discovered that Egbert played Dungeons & Dragons and had written a note saying, "To whom it may concern, should my body be found, I wish it to be cremated." On August 11, 1980, Egbert shot himself in the head and died 5 days later. This shocked many of the people who had been concerned about Dungeons & Dragons before. In the coming years, a large amount of media conveyed an anti-D&D sentiment. Movies, news, comics, and books, all cashing in on the adult's favorite fear. Perhaps the most notable of these is the made-for-TV film Mazes and Monsters, starring a young Tom Hanks, based on the 1981 book of the same name by Rona Jaffe. In the movie, Tom Hanks's character Robbie slowly turns into his D&D character until he becomes so delusional that he attempts to jump off the World Trade Center. Another piece of media is the 1984 religious tract Dark Dungeons by Jack Chick. In it, the main character Debbie plays D&D with her friend Marcy, and Marcy's character is killed in the game. Debbie is taught how to cast real spells in an occult ritual, and when she returns home, Marcy has killed herself. Debbie is so distraught by this that she goes to church, repents, turns to Jesus, and then burns the D&D material. It became a common belief that this game didn't just convert children to the occult, but also promoted murder, suicide, rape, violence, homosexuality, witchcraft, etc. Its loudest critic was a woman named Patricia Pulling. On June 9, 1982, her 16-year-old son Banks shot himself in the head. Patricia Pulling later went through his things and found notebooks filled with Dungeons & Dragons material and a curse his character received in the game the day that he died. The curse stated, "Your soul is mine, I choose the time. At my command you will reave the land, a follower of evil, a killer of man." Patricia Pulling had already been alarmed by D&D and what happened to Egbert, and believed she discovered the cause of her son's suicide. She sued the principal of her son's high school because their gifted teacher had introduced D&D to Bink. Her lawsuit was unsuccessful, but Pulling did not stop at that. She created an organization called BAD, which stood for Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons. She handed out brochures, got a license as a private investigator, and appeared on talk shows in the news, eventually writing her own book, available in many Christian bookstores, titled The Devil's Web: Who is Stalking Your Children for Satan? She gained a lot of attention, including that of Tipper Gore, who famously advocated against explicit music. However, there was much backlash against Pulling as well. Many kids argued that she didn't know anything about the game. The game's creator, Gary Gygax, stated, "It's nothing but a witch hunt." He was particularly exasperated because he was a Christian himself. A man named Joseph P. Laycock claimed that Pulling was dishonest when she said she played Dungeons and Dragons for many hours a day for a month to learn more about it. Laycock claimed Pulling lacked even a rudimentary understanding of what D&D is or how it is played. A friend of Bink's said the following: Bink only played D&D at school for a total of 9 hours. In this person's opinion, Bink's suicide had been an act of aggression towards his mother. Both of his parents had been having affairs before the suicide. Bink shot himself in the chest with a .38 caliber pistol that belonged to his mother, and his choice to commit suicide on the front porch appeared to be a deliberate attempt to shock and horrify his parents when they returned home. Many suspect that the fact that Pulling knew so little about her son playing the game points to the idea that Pulling was never particularly involved in her son's life, which could have been something that drove him to do it in the first place. Today, Dungeons & Dragons is so thriving, it serves as a creative outlet for kids and adults alike, and has been revitalized and revolutionized by the new generation. Dungeons & Dragons podcasts are popular, and countless books, dice, and campaigns are available for sale. Experts have claimed it improves social and emotional well-being by allowing you to confront your issues as a character. According to a Smith College study, D&D was the turning point in therapy that brought the client to wellness. Unconscious patterns and urges were being acted out within the game that could be brought into therapy by discussing the behaviors of the fantasy character. The moral panic of old isn't well known anymore. The panic died off in the 1990s and almost disappeared after Pulling's death in '97 due to lung cancer. However, her influence is far from gone today. Over the years, many more panics ensued. The 1976 arcade game Death Race involved driving over gremlins that looked and sounded like people. In 1982, there was a disclaimer before Michael Jackson's hit Thriller's music video, stating, "Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this film in no way endorses a belief in the occult, Michael Jackson." In 1992, the video game Night Trap, which involved vampires attempting to kill teen girls at a sleepover, became so controversial that the ESRB rating system was created. In the late 1990s, parents were frightened by Polybius, a supposed arcade game that was allegedly being used by the government to induce certain mental effects upon the children who played it. However, the game never existed in real life and was only an urban legend. In the 2000s, the Harry Potter series was banned in some schools for containing material on witchcraft and magic. Now, a common debate is whether violent video games actually lead children to commit violent acts. While parents claim that violence stems from these sources, they never really study the content of the games, rather choosing to point fingers, promote distrust between parents and children, and cut their children off from opportunities to enjoy both escapism and creativity. The merciless antagonization of media and self-expression will not cease until every parent is able to look past the surface, dare to do more than assume, but to research, empathize, and understand. And in this teen's humble opinion, it is that quality that makes a parent truly great. If a parent won't see both sides of an issue or even make an attempt to understand, then that develops a culture of secret keeping and harm, or in Pulling's case, maybe something even worse. Being a parent is not an easy job by any means, but it is a parent's responsibility to be able to conquer the frontier of a new and unknown medium, to truly connect with their children and raise them to be the best that they can be. The Dungeons & Dragons moral panic serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what will happen if we allow premature judgment and blindness to fester. And to quote Mazes and Monsters, "The most frightening monsters are those that exist in our minds."